UFC Vegas 18 is this Saturday in Las Vegas, and I have none other than Craig Allen of Fight Night Picks here to help me break it all down. Craig, how are you?
Ryan, I'm well. I'm looking forward to this. It's been a long time.
I know. I'm excited to see some fights. Obviously, Abu Dhabi is now in our rearview mirror. Back in Las Vegas at the Apex, headlined by Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov, monster heavyweight matchup. Excited to break that down and get your take as to who you think is going to win that one. But before we dive into all of this, I do want you to tell everyone that is watching, what's going on with you. I know you and your brother Matt are crushing it on your YouTube channel, Fight Night Picks. So give us a little lowdown as to what we can expect to come here in 2021.
Listen, we had a lot of fun in 2020. We really tried to switch things up. And I mean, the start of this year's been great. We had the fight companion for UFC 257. That was a lot of fun. It was a bit of a different thing. Maybe you get out of your comfort zone a little bit. It's something that we had done in years prior, but it was pretty dry and pretty boring when we were doing it before. So we really tried to spruce that up. We've been hitting on all cylinders with question mark kicks, which is a couple hours before the cards. But listen, we hype ourselves up so much for these cards. And this one coming up this weekend is such a great one. The main card's awesome. There's a lot of great undercard fights here too. And I always looking for those up and comers. There's definitely a lot of up and coming talent on this one for sure.
No doubt about it. Now, as far as what you and your brother are doing at Fight Night Picks, are you where you expected to be right now? I mean, you guys really are. You're reaching quite a huge audience, really. I mean, I believe you're close to 20,000 subscribers now. Just tell me like what your plans are for the future.
We definitely smashed kind of some of those goals, but personal goals, just adding to the channel, really adding things that I'm interested in. Hopefully other fight fans are interested in. We've done different shows, different podcasts, but that's really what I'm passionate about. So maybe just adding some of those in. Hopefully people realize that, we're enjoying them and they do too. But really with the long-term goals, it's hard to tell what's going to happen. I had no idea that last year was going to be what it was. So it's really tough to kind of tell, but we're just going to keep kind of zigging and zagging and doing our own thing over there.
Yeah, well, you guys really are doing a phenomenal job. Do you guys get along as well as it seems like you do? Because you guys have a good rapport with one another. I mean, obviously he's your brother, but some brothers butt heads. Like, what is that dynamic like?
It's pretty good. I mean, last year, okay, let's break it down. In the last couple of years, I beat him in terms of the picks. He came back pretty strong at the end of last year. So far this year, he's got me by 4, which isn't good through the last 3, but he gained a good 4 of them on the last card. I went with a few weird underdogs. I made some odd predictions. But at the end of the day, we've kind of talked about it like this. Our picks might be good. Our picks might be bad. They've been pretty good so far. Percentage-wise, you can go back and check out all the videos, and we post everything down in the descriptions. We're as honest as we can be, right? But to us now, and moving forward, the analysis is where it's at. So while I might not have picked that fight right, I hope that at least somebody gained a nugget of information about fighter A and fighter B to where they can have the conversation now in 2021 over Zoom. Hopefully they can do it at a bar in front of their friends, but you at least have a talking point that you can say, hey, I know that Alistair Overeem did this in his last fight, or Minal Cape did this in Ryzen. So that's really where we're at. But we don't really tend to butt heads too much. I mean, off camera, we're pretty good. I mean, it's not like we're, living in the same house growing up together anymore. So, yeah, I can really throw shade at him. He can have a laugh when the cameras are off, and we have a pretty good time.
Yeah, well, tip of the cap to you and Matt. You guys are really doing a great job. So keep the content coming. Let's dive into this one, why don't we? Again, the main card is phenomenal, headlined by those monster heavyweights, and literally monster heavyweights. I mean, just large men. The undercard, though, like you said earlier, a lot of great fights here to break down. Give me one fight in particular on that undercard that you're really feeling like, if you're a fan and you just can't miss this fight, like which one is it? Which one stands out?
Do you want me to get freaky and weird with it?
Get as freaky as you want. Yeah.
So this card shuffled quite a bit on the UFC website, UFC stats. We've had a lot of stuff added here recently. The one that Matt and I had a hard time trying to predict, let alone even talk about, Denis Bondar taking on Oday Osbourne. That's the one. It's at a catch weight of 140 pounds. If you look at Denis Bondar's other fights, certain sites have him listed as a bantamweight, but truly, he weighed in at 57 kgs for a lot of his last fights. So he really is kind of in and around that flyweight limit. Oday Osbourne, his last time out, took on Brian Kelleher. Somewhat a short notice. You look at Oday Osbourne, you see, okay, this guy submitted a lot of guys, but he's also been submitted. Neither one of these guys has taken on a very high level of competition. So for Denis Bondar, he's coming in with a lot of finishes as well, but he's beating guys that are 2-2, 0-2. It's all about the way that he's finishing fights. His wrestling is very good. He leaves his head out there on the center line and he gets hit a lot. He's also been out wrestled and put in very compromising positions by some maybe less than stellar competition in the past, but he's overcome those. And I likened him to Michael Chandler, which is going to sound really weird, but Michael Chandler, going into the fight with Dan Hooker, it wasn't so much about, okay, this guy hasn't taken on the same level of competition that Dan Hooker has. It's how has Michael Chandler beaten his competition? And for Denis Bondar, he's getting a lot of first and second round finishes, a lot of wrestle heavy type of submissions, a lot of head and arms. He gets some guillotines here and there, maybe some triangles. But Oday Osbourne makes this fight really interesting because he's such a long fighter. He's such a good puncher, and he has decent takedown defense. I think this is going to be a great fight. And honestly, I had a hard time trying to pick a winner in that one.
Who did you go with?
I went with Bondar ever so slightly. But that's the thing. You see a lot of these Eastern European prospects come in and it's like automatically, I'm going with that fighter. They have a more extensive record. They have a lot more finish wins on their record. But the thing, like I said, Denis Bondar puts himself into so many compromising positions. I could see Oday Osbourne knocking him out. I could see Oday Osbourne catching him in like a guillotine as Bondar goes for a takedown. It's not as cut and dry as a lot of the predictions that we've done in the past. So I'm just looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good fight.
Yeah, I was really surprised with Oday's performance against Brian Kelleher. Maybe I was a little bit of a prisoner of the moment after seeing him, come out initially. I was like, man, oh man, this guy, he could be huge in this division. He really could, climb the ranks rather quickly. And then Kelleher stopped that hype train pretty quickly. What do you think Osborne's ceiling is at this point?
It's tough to tell, like you kind of alluded to. I mean, you look at the way that he got finished, and it was kind of a bonehead move, right? Like, you're not going to fight Brian Kelleher like that, or you probably shouldn't, but Oday did, and he ended up getting finished. But I went back, I had a look at the record. Again, there's some salty competition out there. You look at the win over Armando Villarreal. He looked amazing on Contender Series. He looked amazing on the regional scene. I think he's a guy that could end up, in a bantamweight division that's absolutely loaded. Maybe he cracks like a top 30 ranking, but it's really tough to tell because the skills are there. He just has to bring them together. So you want to bring up another big name? Gilbert Burns. The skills were always there. He just had to bring them together. And then finally at 170 pounds, he really figured everything out, mixed in the wrestling with the grappling, with the striking. I don't think Oday Osbourne is the next Gilbert Burns, but if he brings everything together, the power's there, the length's there, the wrestling's there, and the submission abilities are there, maybe he goes on a run, but it's tough because you beat Denis Bondar. Well, how good are you? You probably have to take on another prospect, and it's going to be really tough to gauge what you get out of Osbourne. So looking forward to it, but it's really tough to tell at this point.
Yeah, I like that analogy too. By the way, Burns and Usman, oh my God, that's going to be a firefight if I've ever seen one. I can't wait, but I'll digress. We'll stay here with this card. A couple of guys that I want to get your take on. I just interviewed them actually earlier today. Yusuf Zalal and Justin James. Zalal is facing Sung Woo Choi. I probably butchered that. I apologize. and then James is taking on Devontae Smith, who, wow. That right there is one hell of a fight. Let's start with that one. It's a lightweight matchup. What are you going to be looking for in this one?
I see it in X's and O's here pretty clearly. For Devontae Smith, how good will he be off of this Achilles injury, but also his first UFC loss, which was by a finish against a former sparring partner and a friend. And it almost looked like a sparring match between Kama Worthy and Devontae Smith. I mean, it was reminiscent of Yancy Medeiros and Cowboy Cerrone. They're buddies. They're tapping gloves. And then Kama Worthy goes, let's cut this. And I'm really in a fight here. So he finishes his buddy. And then Kama Worthy goes on. And obviously he lost his last fight. But Kama Worthy looked amazing. For Devontae Smith, he has the Achilles injury. He's been off for about, a year and a half at this point. It's been a long time since we've seen him. He's supposed to take on Alex Da Silva, who hasn't looked good in the UFC, but he's more or less a jack of all trades. He's a good young talent. So it would have really given Devontae Smith a lot of problems. I thought Smith would have handled Da Silva quite handily. But then I look at Justin James. Well, if he's going to go out there and just, try to Julian Lane this thing and he wants to bang bro, he's going to have a tough time. if he wrestles, which we saw in the regional scene, in his amateur career, in his collegiate career in Michigan, well, he's going to look amazing. But he hasn't, and it's such a tough question mark. So to give the pick, I went with James, which seems insane. Even saying that, it seems kind of crazy. But if he wrestles, I think he's going to have really good success. It's just if he wrestles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he told me in our interview earlier today that's not what he plans to do. He is headhunting, looking to take Devante's head clean off. So we'll see. Maybe Smith tags him early on, gains his respect, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna fight a smart fight here and stick to my wrestling. We'll see come fight night. But at the end of the day, when you get in there and you're going toe to toe with some of these guys, sometimes your ego can get the better of you.
Oh, that's not a good answer. The Fight Night Picks fans are not gonna like that one, but we'll have to let them know. But yeah, we've seen James. He went in a firefight against Camacho and he came out with his hand raised. But then he fought Gavin Tucker. He knocked, he knocked the cobwebs loose a little bit with Tucker after he kind of wobbled him. And then after that, it was all Tucker. And then his last fight against Gabriel Benitez, that finishing sequence was insane for Gabriel. So yeah. It's a tricky one, but it should be a good fight.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, Youssef Zalal, he's coming off the first loss inside of the octagon that he's had to date. This will be his fifth fight for the UFC promotion here. And again, a really tough opponent. Sung Woo Chu, no joke, he's very well-rounded. And I really like Zalal. I talked to him, too, with the interview earlier today about what it was like fighting over in Abu Dhabi and how the time difference could have potentially messed with him. He told me that he was asleep right before he was getting ready for his fight, and his coach had to wake him up and basically shock his system to get him, amped up, ready to fight. I got to imagine that had to play a little bit into that fight. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really like this guy. I'm high on Youssef Zalal. The Moroccan Devil is legit, and I think he's going to crack the top 15 and top 10 at some point down the line. What are you looking for in this matchup? Do you think he can right the ship and get back in the win column?
I think he can. Here's the tricky thing. For Sungwoo Choi, he came into the UFC and he fought Movsar Evloev. Movsar Evloev, to me, is a future top 15 guy, and I think he's going to move the ranks quite handily. He's a great fighter. In that fight, Movsar, if you look at the numbers, he lost a round, but truly he had an illegal knee in the second round and lost a point. And then Sungwoo Choi fought Gavin Tucker, Canadian, and Gavin Tucker lost a point. And then Sungwoo Choi fought Suman Mokhtarian and beat the wheels off him. But he lost the point due to a fence grab. So Sungwoo Choi's had 3 fights, and 3 times somebody's lost a point in a Sungwoo Choi fight. Will that happen in this one? I don't know. I know he's a Muay Thai champ. He was a bronze medalist at the 2010 Muay Thai World Championships. He has a great right hand. He has a great right kick. Apart from that, he can get himself caught. Now, he has decent takedown defense. I know if you go back and watch his fight against Gavin Tucker, that's all Joe Rogan talks about. Youssef Zalal is such a jack of all trades. I like him in this fight. I like the volume out of Youssef Zalal. He doesn't seem to get caught in the moment. I know, again, in that fight against Topuria, well, it's tough because Ilia Topuria is such a good power puncher. He's such a good wrestler. Just ask Damon Jackson. I mean, his boxing's insane. So it's really tough to take on a guy like that. I think Zalal has a good opportunity here. And again, Jane's coming in on short notice. You've got Youssef Zalal coming in on short notice. This should be a good fight, too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's dive into this main card. You told me earlier, actually, Marcel Dorf is the one that announced it, but the Cody Stamann Andre Ewell fight is now off. Looks like Ewell has tested positive, or was it a negative test, or how did that?
Positive and then a couple of negatives. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, so that's out. So really, we only have 5 fights on this main card to get to. Let's start with Alexandre Pantoja and Manel Kape. This is a barn burner of a fight. I can't wait for this one. Pantoja's coming off a UD loss to Askar Askarov. Prior to that, he had a big win over Matt Schnell, which really was a nice feather in his cap. And Kape, this is his UFC debut. What can we expect to see out of this fight?
Manel Kape, if you go back and look at his record, it was a little salty when he entered Ryzen, but then you got to consider the level of competition he was taking on. Kyoji Horiguchi. Who at bantamweight or flyweight can beat Kyoji Horiguchi these days? Well, his ACL and maybe Kai Asakura, but that's it. So Kape loses to Horiguchi, loses a split to Kai Asakura, gets a win, loses to Ulka Sasaki, and then it looks like, well, all is going to be forgotten and lost. And then he rings off 3 big second-round wins over Sachiro Ito. He beats Takeya Mitsugaki that a lot of UFC fans will recognize, and then he beats Kai Asakura. And he doesn't just beat Kai Asakura in the rematch. He knocks him out in the second round with a great combination and a great crisp punch. And the thing that I love about Manel Kape, especially in that Mitsugaki fight, you look at the way that he boxes. You look at the way that he puts his hands behind his back and he taunts people. I've got a book here, and I showed this in the prediction videos, but it's by Lee Montville. It's called Sting Like a Bee, about one Muhammad Ali. And listen, Manel Kape's not Muhammad Ali, but this guy will stunt in the cage. He has such crisp footwork, and he uses it when he needs to. When he's from an orthodox stance, his lead left hook is his best punch. But when he switches to a southpaw stance, his right hook is his best punch. You don't see that type of stuff very often. Again, the way that he spins, his footwork, it's amazing. He doesn't throw a ton of kicks. The two things that are really weird in this one that I almost worry about ever so slightly, he's used to fighting with wrestling shoes on and socks, and he's also used to fighting in a ring. That didn't work well for Fedor when he started to fight in a cage. Let's see how it affects Manel Kape. And on the other side, Alessandro Pantoja. This guy's hell on wheels. He's such a crisp striker. He hits so hard. He'll get in a firefight. His grappling's great. And you look at his last two losses. Well, you got a champion that's amazing. And then you have a Russian who is one of the best grapplers this division has ever seen, apart from maybe Demetrius Johnson, Henry Cejudo. But Askar Askarov is such a special talent. The only blemish on his record is a draw to Brandon Moreno, who Pantoja's beaten twice, once in the Ultimate Fighter and once to just say, see you later, Brandon, go have fun in LFA and make your way back up. I love Alessandro Pantoja. I love Manel Kape. I gave the edge ever so slightly to Pantoja in this one, but we call them pop and popcorn fights. This is a pop and popcorn fight. This is one of those ones that gets me out of bed in the morning.
Could this potentially be fight of the night?
I think it could. We have this one marked as a fight of the night for sure.
Very good. Well, this next matchup at 155 pounds very well could be fight of the night as well. Diego Ferreira and Beneil Dariush. Ferreira is on a 6-fight win streak. You got Dariush on a 5-fight win streak. I mean, both of these guys look just like they are ascending and just right now at their peaks. I can't wait for this fight. This is my early fight of the night pick. I can't wait. I really feel like it's going to be toe-to-toe and go the distance. I don't even know where to lean, so help me figure that one out.
So with Pantoja Kape, we cheat with fight night picks. We have 2 picks for fight of the night. These are the 2 picks for fight of the night. So you got Pantoja and Kape, and that's probably mine. But the rematch between Diego Ferreira and Beneil Dariush, that's right up there. All that being considered, it was a great fight for Diego Ferreira in that one. He picks up a huge win over Mairbek Taisumov. We've never seen anybody look like that. All that being said, you look at the last 3 wins for Diego Ferreira. Rustam Khabilov, Mairbek Taisumov, and then the win over Anthony Pettis. And he's been off for a little bit. It's been a little over a year. But those last 3, Khabilov was on a 6-fight win streak. Mairbek Taisumov was on a big win streak as well. And then Pettis was coming off the Diaz loss, but that was a huge win me over type of fight for Diego Ferreira, who's 36 years old coming into this one. And like you alluded to, these guys fought, 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago. Dariush picked up a great decision win. You look at the win streaks for both of these guys, Dariush being the more active fighter, coming out of King's MMA, training with the Giga Chikadzes, the Kelvin Gastelums, and the list goes on and on. And those last 4 wins for him, all by finish, Drew Dober, Frank Camacho, Jakar Close, Scott Holtzman. I mean, the Jakar Close finish was amazing, but the Scott Holtzman, you rarely see people throw a spinning back fist and land flush. You see it hit a forearm, a little bit of an elbow, maybe even you get the back of the arm. He landed so hard on the side of that guy's face, knocked him down. The referee knew enough to end the fight right there. Holtzman did pop up, but, well, it took him a little bit of time, but he did pop up. I love Beneil Dariush in this fight because he's such a jack of all trades, and his striking so crisp. Diego Ferreira has to close distance to strike against Dariush. He can just pump the jab, throw the right hand. It's such a good fight, like you said. I have Dariush in this one, but it's just such a good fight.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. I do feel like Dariush. If I had to put money on it, that's where I'm leaning. I'm not betting on this fight. I really feel like it could go either way. But yeah, market fight of the night. This really could be the one that steals the show. Now you got a female fight at 135 pounds. Marion Reneau. She's 9-6-1. She's on a 3-fight losing streak, so this is a big one for her against Macy Chiasson. 6-1. She's coming off a UD win over Shanna Young. I got to be honest. I don't know as much about Marion Reneau as I do Macy Chiasson. Like, what can Marion do in this fight to give her the best chance to get a W here?
So I'm 26. I'm probably halfway between 26 and 27. When I'm 43 and a half, I don't want to be fighting. But Marion Reneau's got a fight coming up this weekend. And when she steps into that cage, she will be 43 years old, 7 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days old. That's insane. You don't see that very often. She's on a 3-fight losing streak, but not all losses are created equal. I do have a problem with the 2 losses, at the start and at the end of this losing streak, so to speak. When she fought Kat Zingano, she got outclassed. When she fought Raquel Pennington, she got outclassed. In the fight against Yana Kunitskaya, she lost, and she lost by decision. It was a unanimous, 29-28 by all 3 judges. But I had it 29-28 for Reneau. She cracked Yana Kunitskaya. She had her swollen up. She fought a really good fight. And the thing with Marion Reneau, very diverse skill set. She's great off the mat. She's great when fights on the feet. She's a gym teacher. So she's run the beep test a few times. She's definitely a really strong fighter. Maybe not the best at wrestling, but it's not terrible. But off her back, she can offer up a lot. But she falls into that Luis Smolka problem until his last fight, where he kind of gets a little content off his back. She can do the same thing. With Macy, I mean, you know her, you love her. She won the Ultimate Fighter, up a weight class. She has a huge win over Panny Kanzat. The loss troubles me that she has to Lena Landsberg. I mean, the Elbow Queen's a great fighter, but that's a tricky one. I have Macy in this fight. I'm looking at the odds. She's a little bit over a 2-1 favorite. I don't know if I love that. I'm surprised they're that far apart because the win that she had in the bit of a comeback against Shanna Young, Young took it on incredibly short notice. She was coming up a weight class. I know she's had fights at bantamweight. And Chiasson looked great. So it's a good comeback win. If she gets a win here against Marion Reneau, okay, then Macy Chiasson's the fighter that I thought she was. But Marion Reneau has an opportunity in this one. Like, I don't have this on any of my cards here.
Really? Okay. Well, that's interesting. I actually felt like Macy would be that 2-1 favorite that you said she is. So intriguing matchup here in the women's bantamweight division. I like Macy. There's something about her that I can't help but want to pull for. But then again, I mean, look at all these 43-year-olds nowadays. You got Tom Brady still killing it in the NFL, and Marion Reneau, who's going to be 43 come fight night. So very impressive. You can't not, I guess, respect that as a fan to see someone at that advanced of an age going out there and doing that.
It's a Bellator play.
There you go. Co-main event. This really is an exciting matchup. Corey Sandhagen and Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar, former champion, all-time great. Sandhagen's coming off that huge win over Marlon Moraes. I didn't see that coming. But again, Moraes has kind of he's taken a couple steps back recently. So I don't know. Maybe his chin is gone. Maybe his prime is behind him now. But Corey Sandhagen, prior to that win over Moraes, he had that really disappointing loss to Aljamain Sterling. I mean, no shame in losing to him. But I feel like Sandhagen really could have really given him a little bit tougher of a fight. And I think he's got to be disappointed about it and a chip on his shoulder. What do you expect to see out of him against a legend, really, in Frankie Edgar?
Did you think that Frankie Edgar won his last fight?
No, I did not. I thought he lost a decision, and I know he got the split win. I didn't agree with that.
I had, Pedro Munoz, I had him 3 rounds to 2. Going back and watching it, I still feel the same way that I did the night that I saw it. But for Frankie Edgar, what's a positive? Well, he had a 5-round fight at bantamweight, and he looked pretty good. Like, he didn't really look like he lost much of a step. He really mixed everything in well. Is Pedro Munoz the same fighter as Corey Sandhagen? Well, part and parcel. They're both good strikers. They both have good jiu-jitsu, but they're not at all the same fighter because Corey Sandhagen's like Slender Man at 135 pounds. He's so tall and lanky, and he's so awkward in the way that he strikes. I mean, you talk about Dan Hooker. Well, Dan Hooker's kind of like that at 155, throws a lot of stuff up the middle. He's not as quirky and weird with his movement, but Corey Sandhagen does a lot of those things. You'd think against a guy like Frankie Edgar, excuse me, that would show up. I don't know if it will. He's a huge favorite, Corey Sandhagen. He's more than a 4-1 favorite in this one. The trouble I have is his wrestling's been a question in the past, but his jiu-jitsu always saves him. We saw it in the fight against Aljamain Sterling really early on. What does Sterling do? Gets him down, takes his back, chokes him out while they're still dry. Frankie Edgar is one of the best wrestlers we've seen in MMA. You think of MMA wrestling, I do anyway. Frankie Edgar, Lance Palmer, who he trains with, and TJ Dillashaw. I like those guys in MMA wrestling, especially in the lower weight classes. Well, Frankie Edgar's still a great wrestler. We know he has a gas tank. He spent 7 hours, 40 minutes and change in the octagon. It's insane. It's way more than anybody else. You talk about all the records that he has. Most decision wins, he's up there with 11. Finish bonuses, he has 11 as well. He's still doing it at 39. So you talk about the vintage of Tom Brady, Marion, Reneau. Well, Frankie Edgar's nipping on their heels at 39, and he's still doing it. I picked Edgar in this fight. It might seem wild, but I like the fact that he can keep a pace. He can take Corey Sandhagen down. We've seen Sandhagen get rocked, wobbled, and hurt. I think if Frankie Edgar takes him down just one time and he just stays on top of him, it's going to wear on Sandhagen. I oddly like Frankie Edgar in this fight, but I can definitely hear an argument for Sandhagen.
Yeah, I've always liked Frankie Edgar. He's been one of my favorite fighters to watch, but I am a little concerned for him at this point. You know, look, when you look at someone like a BJ Penn, right? He should have stayed retired many fights ago. I hate when I see someone who at one point was at the top of the food chain, and now you watch them go into the octagon and they look like a shell of themselves. I'm not saying that that's where Frankie Edgar is at right now, because he's clearly not, but I'm not used to seeing him get knocked out by Chang Sung Jung. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something that I expected to see. So when it happens and I see it, it makes me question how much he has left. You know, why stay in it if you're not going to be contending for a title? And honestly, I hate saying it, but at this point, I don't feel like Frankie Edgar is going to be contending for a title. The thing about this fight that really concerns me, if I'm in Edgar's camp, is that length, like you alluded to about Sandhagen. He uses it well. And Frankie, he's as tough as they come. He'll stay in the pocket. He'll move forward. He'll throw with you. He'll make it a dogfight. I'm not sure, if he gets caught, like if he's going to be able to stand up and stay in the.
I'm big, like, we'll go back and forth through the odds, and then we look at the Tapology votes for fun, right? I mean, you can at least see the compare and contrast. 1,383 votes right now, 84% Sandhagen, 48% by decision, 43% by knockout. I definitely misread those numbers when I did them in our original prediction video as submission, because I thought that was silly. Frankie Edgar has never been submitted before. But if I look at that number as 43% by knockout, they're definitely in agreement with you. I just want to say one thing on the Korean Zombie fight. It was supposed to be Ortega. Edgar was already making the move down to bantamweight. He took it on short notice. That's the only, kind of excuse I could have for Edgar in that one. But it is weird to see him and Jose Aldo both down at 35. And if Edgar wins this fight and Aldo won his last fight against Vera, do you put them together? Like, what do you do here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that would be a fight to see for the hardcores. I mean, I know that they've done it before, but I mean, at this point, what can you do? They're both in the top echelon of that division. So it'll be interesting, the matchmaking here moving forward. I'm really intrigued about this fight. Again, as just a fan of Frankie Edgar, I'm going to have my eyes on this one. And if he doesn't perform to the best of his ability, I'm going to question whether or not if I was on his team, sticking around and really making another run.
And a lot of people are going to be questioning me.
All right, main event time. Alistair Overeem, Alexander Volkov. I'm excited anytime I see this guy fight because he's a monster of a man, and so is his opponent Volkov. I mean, tall, long, just the epitome of what you would think a heavyweight would look like. I'm just going to give the reins to you, man. Break it down. I'm not sure who I see winning this one. I think it's a close one.
How often do you see Alistair Overeem fight a guy that has more height, more reach than him? Like, it's absolutely insane. And, I mean, who has a better back piece at this point in the game than Alexander Volkov? He went from having that ugly, a man ray, and then now he's got like this big devil portrait on the back. Like, it puts Ben Affleck to shame, quite frankly. So you look at Alexander Volkov and you look at the fights that he's had. He's 3-2 in his last 5. Overeem's 4-1. Let's look at the losses. The Hail Mary knockout that Derek Lewis had, where Volkov took over that fight until he got knocked out. You have a sandwich win over Greg Hardy, which Was Hardy hurt in the fight? I don't know. I wasn't there, but you had Volkov winning it. And then Curtis Blades. How did you think that Volkov looked in the fight with Curtis Blades?
I actually thought he looked pretty good considering.
Wow.
Curtis Blades makes everyone look bad, because of his style. So, I felt like considering like he did okay. I mean, trying to keep the fight on the feet is a difficult thing to do against Curtis Blades.
I will agree. I will agree with you. You know what? I think you make a really good point because I went back and forth with old Matt Allen. We disagreed on this one. I thought Blades looked great. He went 14 to 25 on takedown attempts. You never see that hardly ever in MMA, let alone heavyweight. But he did start to tire near the end. I had scored it 49-46 for Blades. I saw some 48-47s out there too. But I thought Blades looked decent in the fight. I thought Volkov didn't look terrible, and at least, his cardio's there till the end, and he's fought a lot of 5-round fights. He had, big or good success with Bellator, good success with M1 Global, and he's had main event spots with the UFC as well. Last time out, he finishes poor Wald Harris. Who did Alistair Overeem finish here recently? Poor Wald Harris. Now, Harris did crack Overeem, but I look at the last two, Wald Harris and then Augusto Sakai. There's going to be a lot of arguments out there. This could be yours, so I don't want to ruin it, but a lot of people saying Augusto Sakai outlanded him in terms of total strikes and significant strikes, outlanded Alistair Overeem. And then people get critical of this Overeem that stands up against the cage, moves his head a little bit, waits for his opponent to kind of punch himself out, and then he goes on the counterattack. Worked pretty good against Augusto Sakai, and Augusto Sakai, from what I've seen so far, hits pretty hard. Unless you're, Blagoy Ivanov, it didn't really tend to bother him, even though Sakai won the fight. But for me, Alistair Overeem in his last run since UFC 203 has really incorporated the ground and pound. If he needs to take the fight to the mat, he can. And when he gets on top, you don't really get up. So I look at the Overeem losses. The Blades loss is disgusting. And Volkov didn't lose that way. The loss that he had against Rosenstrike, I mean, again, like Volkov against Lewis, Overeem was beating the brakes off of Rosenstrike right until the end. I like this version of Alistair Overeem. Maybe I don't love the fact that he says, once I win the belt, I'm going to retire. But at least he's talking about winning the belt. So I do like Overeem in this fight. He is an underdog here. I picked a lot of underdogs on this card, which is kind of odd. But I do like Overeem here. I like the takedown abilities. I like the fact that when he's on top, he's heavy. And for Volkov, there's a great opportunity. But yeah, I'm ever so slightly going with Overeem here.
Yeah, well, we're going to disagree on this one. I am going the other way. I feel like Volkov's length and the stamina that he showed against Blades is going to come into play here. Look, this might sound a little crazy, right? But like, take the 5 rounds out of the play. If Blades versus Volkov was like a fight to the death, right? Like, Blades wasn't going to win that fight. Volkov was coming on. He had plenty juice left in the tank. That's what impressed me in that fight, to go against a dominant wrestler like that and to still be there, to still be giving it your all right there till the end. So I'm intrigued about this matchup with Overeem. He's in his 40s now. How much does he have left? How much of his chin is there left? I mean, we've seen him get knocked out, and I think the length here, the savviness of Volkov is going to come into play, and I do see a late stoppage. I'd say the 4th round TKO win for Volkov. That's where I'm going.
And I mean, Tattoo Volkov and also Thick Boy Volkov. I went back through and looked at his weigh-ins, and from Bellator up to the UFC, it's like, 240 to 250, 252. Last time out, he weighed 265, and he looked amazing against Wald Harris. So maybe the weight, the cardio, I don't know what's in the water for Alexander Volkov, but he does have a good opportunity in this fight for sure. And if you get a win over Overeem, well, you're right up there with Blades and Ngannou and Rosenstrike gone and Miocic. And I know he's ranked up there, but it definitely wins you over with a lot of people.
Well, I was just going to ask, what would be next for either one of these guys if they win? I mean, if Overeem, he's talking about a title shot. I mean, Volkov, it's got to put him right there in the discussion too. What would you like to see next for either of these guys?
What do you do with John Jones? Like, that's the trouble. I've got a video banked, and I'll let the cat out of the bag. We were taking fan submissions for questions, and the question was, do you see John Jones as a future heavyweight champ? That's a tough one, because right now, you've got this fight between Volkov and Overeem. You've got a fight coming up between Cyril Gane and a really tough out in Rosenstrike. You've got Miocic taking on Ngannou, and Jones is out there. It's tough to say. I mean, if Overeem beats Volkov, I'd like to see John Jones fight Overeem, and then the guy who wins that fight gets an opportunity at the belt. But it all depends on timing. All these fights are booked up fairly quick. It's tough to tell. This is a log jam, like, lightweight is to an extent, like middleweight is to an extent. I mean, this is really the trickiest division to try and book something. You'd almost have to wait a couple of months. And you hate to do that, especially these days, but you almost have to.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple of quick answers. You don't have to dive into it, but where are you leaning right now with Blachowicz and Adesanya and with Stipe and Ngannou, that rematch?
Ngannou didn't look great at UFC 220, did he? I mean, he got taken down, he got hit a lot, but he's looked pretty good lately. So, I mean, it all depends on how good his takedown defense is and how good his stamina is. I like Ngannou's power. I mean, how can you not? That's a tricky one to try and figure out. Stipe, is he the greatest heavyweight of all time? Is Fedor the greatest? Is Daniel Cormier the greatest? Well, Stipe beat him in the second one, so no. But Stipe's right up there for sure. I like Ngannou ever so slightly. With Blachowicz and Israel Adesanya, that one's tough. And that might also sound crazy. I've said a lot of crazy things today, but Blachowicz is late in his career. He had the rough spot at the start, but he's looked great lately. He looked good against Reyes. Adesanya, just by pretty much kicking Paulo Costa, was able to beat him. Nobody beats Paulo Costa. Nobody had ever beaten him in a pro MMA fight or in a real one, not an exhibition fight. And he looked great. So probably Adesanya, but that one's tricky. That one's really tricky.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, the good news is we have a lot of great UFC events coming here in 2021. So again, Craig, always a pleasure to talk to you, my man. UFC Vegas 18 this Saturday from Las Vegas, and it's going to be on ESPN Plus. So make sure you tune in and check it out. Before I do let you go, I just want to get your take on if there's a fighter or two that stands out to you in this regional area. We met for NEF, down in Portland, right? So is there anybody that stands out to you that you feel like if anyone is watching this show here today, that maybe they could see in the UFC one day?
I think we've talked about this before, and if we haven't, I've talked about it with fight fans in the US before, and they've kind of gone, I've heard of them. I've seen them. They might not have, a pro record. They're a strong amateur. They fight out of the Bangor area. When can we see Glory Watson some more? Like, to me, that's a talent that I think you're really going to see start to, really make waves once we see her on a bigger stage. You've seen Macy Barber and what she can do. Like, you've seen these women really start to break through that have really exciting fight styles. And listen, I look at Glory's record, and there's been some fights that she's won that were really close. I remember the Kari Hill fight that was in Lewiston, watching that thinking, geez, I think Team Quest has got this one in the bag, and Glory ends up winning the fight. But she at least has those fights where you go, man, that was a close one, or that was a really good fight. And she's one of those fighters to me that, if she's able to get more exposure, I think she's really going to break through and gain a lot of fans on the MMA scene.
That's who I thought you were going to say, and I wholeheartely agree. I really am a big fan of Glory. I think that she does have a very bright future, and who knows? You might hear some fight news soon. Just a little preview there. What might be the next week or two. So again, Craig, I really appreciate the time. I look forward to doing this again soon.
Appreciate it, Ryan, as always, man.